All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the webinar today. I'm just going to go over a few logistics here and explain our certificates before I turn it over to Tom, who will introduce the presenters today. Here on the title slide, if you haven't seen already, we do have a support number if you're not able to use the chat box that you have in your navigation bar. We will be monitoring that chat. If you have any issues, audio, or you can't see the slides, please let us know and we'll work with you to figure that out. And also, at any point during the webinars, both presentations, if you have a question, there is a questions box that you can type your questions into. That's how we run our Q&A session at the end of both talks. We will respond to questions that are typed in the question box. Because we do have a lot of people that attend this webinar, we can't allow you to ask questions out loud. And also at the bottom of this slide, you'll see, if you haven't been to our website already, we do have the schedule for the year and past recordings of webinars in case you missed those. Okay, requirements for certificates. So for this webinar, we will give out a certificate for 1 contact hour. You have to be registered or in the room with someone who is registered. You need to attend for 60 minutes, and if you are in a room with others, the person who is logged in the room can provide us the names of the people in the room with you if you want certificates. So you can see here the email address, if you could just send those names to this email. Or you can also type them in the questions box. We can also get them that way. So if you have people in the room, you want to type them there, we'll collect those names there as well. And like I mentioned before, the recordings are posted on our website, usually within a couple weeks of the actual webinar. We cannot provide certificates for viewing those webinars, though. You do have to attend live. And before we move on, these are in your handouts. We just have a couple disclaimers for our presentations today. And with that, I will turn it over to Tom Speth.
Great, thank you very much. And our first speaker is Ellen Tarquinio. Ellen is an environmental protection specialist with the Office of Groundwater Drinking Water's Drinking Water Protection Division, where she focuses on water system partnerships for drinking water systems. Ellen started at the EPA in 2004, developing and leading the National Rivers and Streams Assessment and the National Lake Survey. After a year of working for the EPA administrator, she served as Deputy Director for Water Policy at the White House. Previously, Ellen worked as a fisheries biologist and a GIS specialist for New York State. And so now I'll hand it off to Ellen for her presentation.
Thanks so much, Tom, and thanks to everyone for joining in. This is a really great topic that we're excited to talk to you all about and really dedicate a lot of time and effort here at EPA and working with all the other folks associated with any of the water system partnership opportunities. We really view this as sort of cooperative approaches to helping address some of the drinking water challenges that are out there. So what I'm going to talk a little bit about today is what we mean by water system partnerships. There's a lot of different terms that have been used over the years for this type of idea, and so we really want to just get a basic understanding and a base level understanding of what we mean by partnerships, and then talk about some of the options that exist out there for different partnership types. There's a huge range of different things that we've seen across the country. We've seen very informal partnerships, which I'll talk about, where people maybe are just sharing information between each other, maybe sharing training, and then all the way through to some ownership transfer, which is really a very formal type of partnership. There's definitely a lot of challenges and a lot of benefits that are out there. So we'll talk a little bit about what some of those are, and then what we're doing here at EPA and moving forward, both in the short term and the long term, to try to address some of those challenges and really highlight the benefits for water system partnership use. So this slide is basically just covering some of the things that any of you who are involved in the drinking water sector have seen probably dozens and dozens of times, is that there are a lot of challenges that are facing drinking water systems across the country, and we've certainly seen that here within our own industry. It's been covered very broadly in the news that there's a lot of challenges that are out there, and generally we categorize those into 3 different big topics. Some of the technical issues, the financial, and the managerial issues that systems face across the country. And this can range from some of the small systems to even some of the large systems. You know, these are challenges that are certainly ubiquitous across different systems. Some of those technical issues, again, many of you know this pretty intimately, but that there's adequate and aging infrastructure out there, that many systems were built decades ago, and they're sort of coming to the end of their lifespan, and there's a lot of need to help upgrade some of that aging infrastructure across the country. There's also some limited and sometimes some poor source water, and so treating that really does become a technical issue of trying to address quantity and quality issues. And there's also lack of certified operators across the U.S. Some of the financial challenges are definitely the diseconomies of scale, and we'll talk about that a lot, especially with the partnership lens of how you can address some of those diseconomies of scale, where you're really trying to treat water for a very few number of households and the high cost that requires. We all know that water rates are low for a lot of places, that the value of water and the cost for water doesn't often reflect the price tag to treat that water and deliver it to households. So water rates have been historically low and maybe don't meet the current market price to actually treat water. There's a limited knowledge of some of the financing options and financial tools that are out there. And then there's a whole bunch of different managerial challenges that systems face, that there's often part-time management attention, especially if you've got some of these really small or financially struggling systems. They don't have enough money to maintain a full-time board. And there's a real lack of experience in long-term water system planning and operation. Again, particularly some of these systems that are really struggling with those financial and technical areas. So basically, these are just a couple of those challenges that we know systems are facing across the country. And one of the things that we've been working on here for decades really is how we address those challenges. And what we're really putting a lot of effort here at EPA, and I know a lot of the folks who are on the line and part of this training are also putting a lot of dedicated effort towards, is really looking at different tools that are out there to help some of these systems with the technical, the managerial, and the financial capacity issues that they're struggling with. And we really see water system partnerships as a big tool to help address those issues, that it's systems working together, coming together to address some of the TMF issues by really partnering and leveraging the resources that they each have. Oftentimes you'll have a gap in one system where it's a strength in another one that's nearby. You might have a large system that has a strong financial understanding, and they can help some of their smaller systems that are around with that financial ability. Or you might have a small system that has a really strong technical operator who might be able to help another system in the area address some of the challenges that they're facing from a technical point of view. So really what we're trying to do and how we look at water systems is it's systems, again, working together to address those TMF issues, and it's a tool for being able to do that with limited resources. So a lot of the different types of partnerships that are out there, we really see it as, again, a full spectrum where you're moving from informal cooperation, maybe moving towards some shared contractual assistance, to joint power agency transfer, and then all the way to ownership transfer. So we really do look at all of the different options and all of the different ways that systems can work together, maybe with an outside group, with an association, with the help of a state or a technical assistance provider, to really leverage what they have and the resources that are out there. So let's talk a little bit more in detail about those different types of water system partnerships I mentioned that are on our diagram of the increasing responsibility. And I do want to point out that we're not trying to promote one type of partnership over the other. We we know here, especially talking to all the different systems that are out there, talking to all the different states, the TA providers, the local groups, that there is no one-size-fits-all for a water system partnership. That what might work well for one group, an informal relationship, might not work well for a community a couple hundred miles away. That there's a lot of individual attention that needs to be put into forming these partnerships because there are different needs across the board. And that's why we're really trying to promote, these 4 areas of partnership equally, and we're trying to showcase each one of them because they do each fit different needs that are out there. And there's some systems that will readily go into informal cooperation with each other, where basically they're coordinating with other systems, but without a firm contractual assistance or contractual obligation. So that might mean you have partners who share equipment, that there might be some mutual aid agreements. Again, they might go in at a joint training. Basically, any of the systems that can informally really work with each other, usually because they're nearby, so there's some locational benefits, again, to maybe share trucks or go into bulk chemical supply buying together. Then there's some other systems where contractual assistance might be a better approach. This is where you have water systems contract with each other, but the contract is under the water system's control. It might mean that they're purchasing water from one system to the other, so you might have a distribution system, or they're contracting out operations and management to other systems. We've seen a lot of different examples like this across the country, and this seems to be one that frequently gets used in areas, especially where there's not enough funds to really have a full staff at the water system. You might have some systems that go in and they go into a joint billing. So there's a large billing provider and it helps a whole bunch of different systems actually outsource their billing. Or you might have some systems that go in and have customer service that's done through an outside organization because they can really sort of specialize in that area and the system can't afford to have a full-time customer assistance person on staff. So there's a lot of different options, and again, this is one that we've seen across the country be used really effectively because you do have systems that can really get that economy of scale by working together in a contractual manner, but still have independence of their operating system. Joint Power Agency is another type of partnership that we're trying to promote, which is the creation of a new entity designed to serve that system. And these partnering systems really, they share the management, they share operators, they share source water, they share boards. So this is really where you get some of those big associations where there's a lot of working together to have this joint power agency. And then the final type of water system partnership that we're working towards is, or trying to promote, is ownership transfer. That's where you have the merge and the mutual transfer of a system to an existing entity or a new entity. And it's really where one system is acquired by another. And this is where we've seen this be used most effectively. It's areas where the community and the owner of the operating system is no longer interested in running it themselves, or where there's such great concerns with the source water and the community doesn't want to sort of continue operating that system on their own, and there's public health issues. Again, these 4 different types of partnerships are what we're really trying to work towards and highlight the benefits of across the country. We see benefits, again, for all of them, for multiple users. So we're trying to highlight here just some of the benefits that we see for the system. If you have systems that go in and can really work together, again, particularly in that contractual assistance or even the informal agreement or joint ownership transfer, they can really get a bigger economy of scale. If they're working together, again, to buy bulk chemicals, they'll be able to have a lower rate on their chemical purchase, or they might be able to have a lower rate for that independent billing. So it really helps benefit, especially getting a little bit more financial benefit to those systems by working together, which helps to increase that long-term savings. You can also have improved customer service because there's more time and perhaps there's independent people who are dedicated towards customer service for that utility. And it can allow for planning for future operations. So it can allow some long-term thinking of where the utility wants to go, maybe planning, doing some asset management assessment and looking at where they need to invest down the line, where they can invest together. And it really does help increase that technical, financial, and the managerial capacity of the systems. For the state programs, there's definitely improved compliance, especially when you have a system that is already in compliance helping a system that's not, and whether that be from the technical aspect or the managerial. If you have a system that's now a distribution system, so they're purchasing water that's in compliance, you just really have an improvement of public health across the country, and that's a great benefit really to everyone. There's a reduced number of regulated systems, which does help if there's limited staff to help work with those regulated systems, so it leads to resource savings. There can be more trainings that are dedicated towards those systems, and again, some improved customer relation. And of course, for the customer, there's improved water quality. You can get reduced water bills for the customers in those communities, which really helps for the communities that are in financially struggling areas. And there's also increased reliability of delivery of water. Because of all of those benefits that we just talked about, there's really a movement towards partnerships across the country. There's a lot of systems that are struggling with complex issues, trying to be in compliance with all the different CIDWA rules that are out there, making sure they are meeting some key health advisories. There's a lot of different technical aspects that systems are facing, and again, we talked about there's not enough operators that are out there to help with some of those technical aspects. So systems working together, again, as that tool really helps address that big challenge that systems are facing. One thing that we've definitely seen increasingly over the years is that there's a higher expectation on the public for having safe drinking water delivered to them. And there's really an increased awareness and discussion of the importance of that. And I think we've all seen the challenges that exist when that safe drinking water is not delivered. So there's definitely a heightened awareness right now that's really moving people toward looking at other ways that we can make sure safe drinking water is being delivered to the public. Again, there's a need for a high level of technical, managerial, and financial knowledge across all systems to help meet all the different obligations. And one thing that we've heard a lot, and I'm sure many of you are very aware of, is that there is not enough money and resources out there to meet the demand for that aging infrastructure, for all of the TMF issues that are out there. And so there really is a need for us to look at alternative ways of how we can meet all of the needs that are out there. And we really do see that as partnerships as leveraging the existing resources to help address those needs. And a big push towards the partnership efforts right now, and it's something that we certainly have been working on for a while, but we're at a time now where the technology exists that can really allow partnerships to work across different geographic areas. There's certainly the internet is huge, and so systems in one state can work with systems in a different state to maybe do joint billing. They don't have to be geographically located near each other anymore to have a partnership that really works and is able to leverage some of the resources that exist. So all these different factors are really sort of pushing us, and I know pushing a lot of folks in the water industry to really look towards partnerships as a way to help address all of the issues that are out there. We've had a couple meetings here that EPA has led, and that have focused on what we can do towards water system partnerships. We had one almost a year ago now in July where we brought people together, where we were looking at affordability and how we can address some of the needs for struggling communities for water infrastructure. And we had a full panel there on water system partnerships. Stemming from that panel, we realized that we needed to dedicate more time and resources to really helping push partnerships forward. So we did a full day convening in January on the 31st to really bring all of these different folks from the water sector together to talk about how we can address the challenges that are out there for partnerships. I think there's a shared understanding that there's a real strong benefit to going into them, but there's still challenges that are making their use not as common as it should be. So we again had this very in-depth working meeting on the 31st with about 70 people here in DC, where we really tried to delve into some of the challenges that are out there that are really preventing partnerships, again, from being used more frequently. Some of the suggestions from folks who were at that meeting, from follow-up and what we've heard before, is that we need to help remove obstacles both at the federal, the state, and the local level, wherever possible, to make partnership use more routine, to make it something that people are commonly going towards to help address some of the TMF issues that are out there, that we need to clarify some of the state, federal, and local roles for facilitating partnerships, and review some of the existing guidance and case studies that are out there. People thought that there were gaps that we really needed to fill and that we needed to do a better job highlighting successes across the country. There was also a suggestion that we address some of the concerns of the parent systems, those systems who are taking on some of the struggling systems, a suggestion that a hold harmless provision for past violations so that there's some level of reprieve if they're going to take on a struggling system and it takes them a while to bring them up to speed and brings them back into compliance. There was also a pretty strong request that we provide some financial tools and incentives for partnerships. Maybe it's priority points on a SRS application, or that we even set up a separate fund to help fund some of these partnership activities. So again, we heard a lot of different suggestions, and those were some of the highlights that we've really been focusing on since that convening. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a preview of what we're doing to help address some of the challenges, specifically going from those steps that you just heard. So the way that I'm going to walk through this a little bit is to go through the new web interface that we're going to have to promote some of the activities and some of the different things that are out there for helping water system partnerships be used more frequently by systems. So again, one of the big things that we heard is that there needs to be more clarity, more information out there, more resources that are readily available for people who want to enter into a partnership. So right now they're sort of on a whole bunch of different pages, people are at different stages, and I know our EPA website certainly needs a lot more work. So this is a screenshot of a landing page that we're going to be releasing this summer to promote water system partnerships. And it's really going to focus on what we can do to promote, again, those 4 different categories: the informal partnerships, contractual assistance, some of the joint ownership, and then ownership transfer. We really want to make sure that we're sort of releasing information as it comes out and highlighting some of the work that our stakeholders are doing. So we're going to be focusing on some of the what's new section and the coming up, where we're going to have information from our stakeholders posted on our site as we go forward. One of the first things that we're doing is folks have asked, well, what's available from the different state programs? There's a lot of different states that have different levels of involvement in promoting water system partnerships and different levels of support. So one thing that we're doing is we're going to be listing by state the different programs that really help support water system partnerships. So again, once you this summer come to our website, we'll basically have by state where you can look at the different programs that are available. They'll be categorized into 6 different categories, focusing on the financial, the TMF building, planning, enforcement, some of the state and legislative actions, and then some of the emergency planning partnership activities. This is just a screenshot of if you clicked on the state of Alaska, you'd be able to see some of the different programs that they are supporting, again, in those 6 different categories to help promote water system partnerships in their area. So this will be available, again, this summer, and there'll be a page for each one of the states. Again, that's just to help raise awareness of what's going on out there from the state perspectives to promote these activities. One of the other suggestions was to help really increase the awareness of case studies out there, especially if there's things that are scalable to different areas. So we're going to be highlighting case studies across the country. Right now we're going to be focusing on 50 different case studies when you come to our website that have just little pieces of information about each one of the different areas, each one of the different partnerships that have been entered into. And then we'll have 5 longer case studies that really go into the nitty-gritty details of how the systems entered into that partnership together. Some of the other things that we'll be pushing forward are facilitation tips handbook. So it'll help folks who are going to go through and really be a facilitator to start a partnership. We'll have some key tools, some worksheets for them to go out when they're talking to systems about what they can do to get into a partnership and really figure out which one works best for them. We also have a number of webinars that are going to be published on our website. These were done in 2012, but we've sort of updated them and modernized them a bit for what's going on today and sort of having the newest information about what can be done. And then finally, we're going to have sort of a stepwise process where people can walk through and figure out what is the right partnership for them. If there's a utility that's maybe thinking about some of their TMS issues, thinking about how they can address them, this would be sort of a stepwise process that'll help them figure out, well, of these different partnership options that are out there, what's the best one for me and what resources are out there to help me enter into this partnership? Who can I reach out to and what guidance is already been done to help make this process easier? So with that, I will sort of end my presentation and I think at the end there's a little bit of time for questions, but really just wanted to highlight again what we're doing here at EPA to help promote water system partnerships, with the help of all of our stakeholders, and looking forward to hearing any of your questions.
Michelle or Tom, can you hear us?
Yes, hello. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. I was on mute. Thank you, Alan, for your talk. And I was saying that we will handle questions at the end of Chad's talk. So don't forget to send in your questions for Ellen even during Chad's talk, and we'll address them after Chad's talk, and send in questions for Chad too ahead of time, and we'll address them in about 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, and Tom, before you introduce Chad, I just wanted to bring up again that if you weren't here for the poll at the beginning, if you could please, if you have more than one person in the room, let us know in your questions box how many people are attending with you. It really helps us to justify these webinars because we'd like to continue next year. So if you could do that. And also mention that, I forgot to mention at the beginning, in case you haven't noticed, there's a handout available. It's on your navigation bar. So if you want the slides, they're available there.
Okay, great. And we're ready for our second talk. Our second speaker is Chad Fisher. Chad's an engineer with California's EPA's Division of Drinking Water. He has been with Cal EPA for 9 years, the last 3 of which Chad has led a work team focused on small systems in California's Central Valley. The work area is primarily composed of disadvantaged communities with a variety of water quality challenges. Chad received a BS in chemical engineering from the University of California, Berkeley, and is a registered professional engineer in the state of California. And I will hand the podium to Chad for his presentation.
Thank you, Tom. So great. So again, I'm Chad Fisher. I work at the California State Water Resources Control Board in the Division of Drinking Water, and more specifically in a field office where our task is regulation of primarily small water systems. So before I really get to this overview, I want to tell you that the lens through which I'm presenting from is a field engineer here in California Central Valley, really a boots on the ground approach, really working with these small water systems day in and day out, which really for me has elucidated the case for consolidation and what a fantastic tool that a partnership or consolidation can be. And then, one other aside is, really one of the reasons that I'm on the phone here speaking today is that California is somewhat unique in our ability, or in the Senate Bill 88, which was passed, which gives the Division of Drinking Water the authority to mandate a consolidation. There are, a variety of findings that need to be made and whatnot, and so, but it is, I think that's a unique authority here in California. So, on to the overview of my presentation, which is I want to answer this question of why should consolidations or partnerships, why should we explore that for small water systems? And I think this is just taking off on what Ellen really talked about. I want to spend a little bit of time camping out on our SB 88 process, and like I said, it's somewhat unique, but I think that the different aspects of it will resonate with different folks on the phone out there, and you'll be able to take something or many things away from that process and how it works here in California if there is that mandatory consolidation. So, and I want to talk about a case study of the Pratt Mutual Water Company, a successful consolidation here in California, and I like what Ellen said about really highlighting some case studies, because again, I think that everybody can take something that resonates with them about those particular examples and apply it to what they do in their portion of the water industry and in the different examples that they're encountering. So maybe taking one step back, which is, again, I told you that this is really through the lens of a field engineer here in California Central Valley, which is composed of primarily small water systems, primarily, disadvantaged communities, many severely disadvantaged communities here. Myself and my staff are responsible for more than 300 small water systems. Until about 3 years ago, the regulatory authorities it was administered by the county, but relinquished back to the state about 3 years ago, and that's when myself and my work team were given this challenge. Tulare County has been ground zero for the California's historic drought. So really what I want to draw out there is just that there are definitely water quantity issues here in the Central Valley and here in my experience. And there's definitely groundwater contamination. Most of the small water systems here rely on groundwater, and there's quite a bit of groundwater contamination, primarily nitrate, but also arsenic and organics and a lot of bacteriological problems. And the reason why I'm spending time here telling you about that this is from a field engineer and this is what my experience is based on is I feel strongly that my experience is certainly emblematic of what we experience here in California as far as small water systems go. And I think it's really emblematic of the experience that many people or most people have in the small water system world throughout the country. So again, that's the lens I'm really looking through, and a boots on the ground outlook of how things play out in the small water system world. So I put small water system problems and there's other ones into water quality, water quantity, or the TMF capacity that Ellen spent a lot of time about, which is really a shorthand for how a water system really executes being a small water system provider, right? So whether it's the technical, a managerial, or financial issues, they're responsible for it all. And I think many people on the phone, and certainly I understand and realize that many of the folks out there that are running these small water systems, it's obviously, or many times not their full-time job. They're an accountant or a school teacher or something else, and they're doing it. It's a thankless job oftentimes, and so and even though I am thankful to have those folks taking some responsibility, they often lack some of the technical, managerial, and financial capacity that's really needed, and really what we'll kind of have been focusing on is really can be found in larger water systems. So another point I want to make is really the last point on this slide, that here in California, we don't intend to consolidate all small water systems. Like, this isn't the marching orders, right? It's not really applicable to highly functioning small water systems, even though they may not have the economies of scale that we've talked about before, that Ellen talked about before. They may be functioning well, and those really aren't a candidate for a consolidation. They may be a candidate for another type of partnership, and they're probably already using some of the other sort of partnerships that Ellen spoke about. Maybe it's a contract operator, or maybe it's sharing equipment, or some other informal agreements. And I'm skipping around a little bit, but for the SB 88 process, it requires findings that it's a disadvantaged community, and that they can't reliably supply drinking water that meets all drinking water standards. And so inherent there is that if we're going to talk about SB 88, we need to be talking about a disadvantaged community with one or more of these problems that we're talking about. So now I want to talk about consolidation, and when I say consolidation, I'm specifically talking about a consolidation, but I think that these benefits can be realized through many of the different, that kind of continuum of partnerships that Ellen talked about. So many of these benefits can be realized certainly in a consolidation, but also in other more informal partnerships. So consolidation benefits from a sustainability standpoint, where the larger water system, because of their economies of scale, because of their reserves, diversification of sources, better TMF, better operation, they're more sustainable. And for me, that means that they're, well, not only immediately and kind of in any point in time, can reliably supply a safe, affordable, reliable source of drinking water, but that also they're more resilient to whatever sort of water quality or water quantity challenges they come across in the future, whether it's drought or global climate change, or maybe changing regulations, or just changing water quality. They are more resilient to really meeting those challenges and overcoming those challenges. And when I say they, I guess what I'm really talking about here is a larger water system, and hence, if the smaller water system is consolidated into that larger water system, that's where we realize the benefit. So I want to talk about the obstacles of consolidation, and here it may come across that I'm trying to overcome these obstacles as I'm listing them out, and I apologize, but oftentimes that's what we're doing, is trying to overcome those obstacles. So for a large water system, source capacity may be an issue. They may not just have enough water to bring on X additional customers. There certainly is an increased operation and maintenance. I'll call it a burden. I think oftentimes that's overplayed. But having additional customers certainly increases the operation and maintenance for the existing staff for the large water system. Jurisdiction, simply that if a large water system is going to serve customers outside of, I'm going to say, city limits, that the city staff may not enjoy the same rights and authorities outside of city limits. I'll get into a few examples a little bit later. I think the last one, the bad blood in history, which really what I'm trying to say is just oftentimes for whatever reason, people don't want to do it. They don't have that want. And it could be from, that could be from just really anything. And I think sometimes the other three, the source capacity, jurisdiction, operations and maintenance, and maybe other reasons, those may be, maybe a little overblown. And sometimes in my experience, sometimes it's just it's the want hasn't been there. So for small water systems, they're going to have obstacles that to consolidation or to partnerships, which is really an autonomy argument where, I say all the time that oftentimes people don't move to a rural part of a rural county because they want a lot of people in their business, and maybe that manifests itself as they like their small water system and they like, having kind of minimal cost or just less perceived regulation or whatnot. So that's an argument that I hear. Also with maybe a loss of voice along those lines, that they feel like they have more say in their water system, rather, maybe they're one of 100 people in the small water system and they would maybe be 1 in 10,000 in the larger water system, and feel like, that puts them in some sort of disadvantage. Water rates, I think, is interesting because oftentimes these small water systems will have a lower water rate than the large water system. And I said oftentimes, sometimes, in my experience, many times the smaller water systems rates have actually gone down as a result of consolidation. So I think the example where the water rates are low for the small water system is just that they're artificially low, that they aren't charging enough to have a robust capital improvement plan, and again, to be planning for the future and to be sustainable. They don't benefit, a small water system doesn't benefit as much from economies of scale, and so I've yet to see a small water system that can operate on less money than a large water system and actually have kind of the adequate TMF, have the adequate capital improvement plan, have the adequate reserves. So the last one for me, as a drinking water regulatory guy, as a water quality person, this just kills me a little bit every time when this happens, or when I witness this, which is that the folks in the small water system, for me, often downplay or maybe don't recognize the water quality challenges that they're facing. And this manifests itself for me in public meetings, or at, maybe CSD board meetings or something like this, where the person says, I've been drinking this water for X number of decades and I'm fine. And again, it really kind of crushes me inside, because, what a disservice that that may be well-intentioned, but that, downplaying that water quality issue, that, every person has the right to a safe supply of reliable water, and and if there are water quality issues in that small water system, they definitely do not need to be downplayed, and we need to play an active role in really making sure that there's full transparency, that people understand the challenges that they really are facing there. So benefits to consolidation, this is a simplified version of what Ellen talked about, and I put quotes needs for SB 88, which I'll get to in a second, but from a regulatory perspective, really this is about providing water that meets drinking water standards, providing safe water to these folks. And so it checks that box from a regulatory standpoint, but that's really a public health standpoint, right? Provision of safe drinking water. Financial box that it ticks is that when available, if we're looking at alternatives of, say drilling a well or installing treatment or perhaps consolidation, we need to fund the best alternative. And if consolidation exists, technically, and if it's a viable solution there, we need to make every effort, because it solves the small water system problem, the water quality problems, and any to come, for the foreseeable future, forever, I'll go ahead and say. Whereas if we funded a new well or whatnot, maybe water quality changes, maybe the quantity changes, I'm not sure, but just recognizing that we could solve that problem and then come back to solve the same problem or another problem again. But if we took the route of consolidation, we wouldn't be doing that. And my argument there is just that as being a steward of public funds, if we have that we have that top shelf, the top tier solution available, we need to use it. The last one, the human right to water, which is law here in California, is that people are entitled to a safe, affordable, reliable source of drinking water, and we're not going to consolidate a small water system with a large system that doesn't meet drinking water standards. And so, kind of on an instantaneous level, as soon as we can kind of turn that valve, folks are provided with this safe, affordable, reliable solution. And then playing the long game also, as we talked about, the large water systems just are better able to meet any upcoming water quality challenges, whether we know them or not. So SB 88, I touched on it. It provides the Division of Drinking Water the authority to mandate consolidation. So there is a process to go through, which is that we send letters out that asks the water systems to explore voluntary consolidation. We have many public meetings and public hearings, which is an effort to be 100% transparent and to make sure that the Division of Drinking Water and the state of California more broadly are hearing what the people in these communities have to say. And then Division of Drinking Water needs to make findings before we make the order, and the findings need to be that they're a disadvantaged community, that they can't provide, and essentially that they can't provide a safe and reliable source of drinking water to the customers. So this is a case study, and it's the only case study the only system that SB 88, the process has been used. So the small water system in this case is Pratt Mutual Water Company with 300 connections and about 1,200 people, which in my experience for a small system, this is actually kind of a big small system. At any rate, they had two wells that exceed the arsenic standard. It certainly is a disadvantaged community, and they're nearby to the city of Tulare that uses groundwater as a source of supply through about 20 or more groundwater wells. They meet drinking water standards and serve about 70,000 people. So so Pratt is, even though they're on the larger side of a small system, it's kind of a drop in the bucket, pardon the pun, for the city of Tulare. So to move through the timeline there, Pratt received an arsenic compliance order in February of 2010, and shortly thereafter embarked on a planning project which analyzed alternatives of drilling a new well. They could do arsenic treatment, or that they could try to consolidate with this nearby city of Tulare. And they selected, or the preliminary engineering report and the community decided that consolidation with the city of Tulare, if it's available, would be a fantastic solution. And they went forward with the cooperation of the city of Tulare at this time with developing an extraterritorial services agreement, some other legalese, environmental documents, plans, and specifications. And from there, jumped into a construction project which included new distribution system, water meters, and some transmission mains to consolidate them with the city of Tulare. However, in 2015, as the construction project was getting done, the city of Tulare essentially put the brakes on it and said, well, wait a second, we understand that you think we agreed to this previously, but now we're not so sure. And their obstacles here were the obstacles that they put up were source capacity. Hey, we don't know if we have enough water anymore. We're in the middle of a drought. Things have changed since 2010. And a jurisdictional issue which I touched on before, but that, Pratt Mutual Water Company is outside of the city limits of the city of Tulare, and so their argument was that their utilities employees and even their police and whatnot don't enjoy the same authority outside of city limits. I'll throw up an example which they threw out, which is if the city needed to go and terminate service for whatever reason, but probably not paying a bill. Well, one, that utility employees couldn't go and trespass if needed, like they would be able to do in the city limits, and then also that if law enforcement needed to accompany them, they're out to shut off service. City police don't have authority in unincorporated areas of the county. You know, those are a bit of a hollow argument for me, because at least in this specific case, we put in the new $5 million of public money of infrastructure went into this project, and meters are installed in the public right-of-way, so no trespassing required. That's where you would shut off. And then the county was on board for, if law enforcement was needed, that they would make sheriff available. So I think, you know, we can get around, again, it's kind of coming back to how to maybe we overcome these objections or these obstacles when we face them. But at any rate, the city filed for declaratory relief, and they went into mediation. The declaratory relief is essentially that they filed a lawsuit to the court saying, hey, you know, the city and Pratt Mutual Water Company, we can't really agree on what our previous agreements were. So courts, you guys decide. So Division of Drinking Water was pretty heavily involved here in the mediation and in somewhat of the negotiations. But what ended up happening was that SB 88, an SB 88 order was issued to the city before the suit went to trial. And I will say and kind of applaud the city that once they got the SB 88 order, they really dedicated a lot of staff and really ended up pushing the project forward from that point, which from that point it only took about 2 months until the folks at the Pratt Mutual Water Company were being served compliant water from the city of Tulare, which is, you know, what I mean, I think it illustrates that we were right there on the edge and that the city just wasn't willing to do it at that point. And when they were compelled to with the SB 88 order, it went very, very quickly. And what a success that these folks that had been under a compliance order for, you know, the better part of 6 years, were now receiving water that meets drinking water standards, which that's what my, you know, every working day is about for me. And so what a success there. A couple lessons learned, and then we're into questions, which something that the voluntary consolidation is highly preferred. I mean, and I think I really like what Ellen said about this continuum of partnerships that are available, and that finding whatever works for each circumstance is really, really important. I put here that the easy consolidations are already complete, because in my experience, if you already had 2 willing parties and a common goal, it's already finished. You know, they've already worked through that process, and so I think many of the consolidations that could possibly happen, or the partnerships, you know, they need some help. They need some help in one way or the other, and I think the regulatory community can really help out with that from a regulatory point of view, but also from a technical expertise point of view. So I learned that getting the message to the community and the residents can be difficult, because facts is that you take a group of people that had been paying a bill and being delivered water from a certain entity, and you need them to sign up for service from another entity. It really is a push for just to get the word out. The public outreach that needed to happen was pretty huge. I think in this case, the Division of Drinking Water, but maybe the regulatory community, or maybe some of the third-party technical assistance folks or whatnot, are going to need to bring these systems together, because in the Pratt Mutual Water Company case, it's the Division of Drinking Water that had the relationship with everybody that was involved, and other of those relationships may not have existed. And I'm going to go a step further, that in our case, Division of Drinking Water really needed to lead not only just bring people together and let them go, but we needed to lead with, again, technical expertise and some regulatory authority here, right? Because we are certainly talking about a system that doesn't meet drinking water standards, and so we need to definitely be that regulatory voice. And then again, I think because of all of the experience, also the technical expertise there. And for me, again, I already said it, it reaffirmed that the consolidation was a fantastic alternative. And I've heard it certainly from the Pratt Mutual Water Company that they're just, they're borderline thrilled that they're not a public water system anymore, and that moreover, all of their customers are getting water that meets drinking water standards, which again, is the big box that we check here when a consolidation is able to happen, is that people that otherwise didn't have a reliable, safe source of affordable drinking water, that they, as we turned the valve to open it from City of Tulare to Pratt Mutual Water Company, kind of instantaneously that happened. So that was really a success, really a fantastic happening. So with that, I'll conclude and send it back to Tom to facilitate the questions. Thank you.
Okay.